I want to talk to you today about your thoughts and emotions. I'm betting that you know that your thoughts and emotions play a really big role in your life. But perhaps you haven't noticed that your thoughts and emotions actually have a certain rhythm to it. Now, by that I mean that there's a pattern, like a repetition, right? We all know that thoughts can be very repetitive, and even feelings, right? We can have the same ones over and over again. But I'm talking more specifically like they follow a very clear pattern. And I like to call this pattern a wave. Your thoughts come in like waves, and so do your emotions. And when you understand the pattern that this implies, the next thing that becomes really important is understanding how to ride the wave. Stick around, and we're going to talk about our thoughts and our emotions and the pattern that they follow and how to master riding these waves. I want to start this conversation about our thoughts and emotions by making a very powerful statement that may shock you unless you've already heard something like this before. The first thing that I want to make clear to you as we get into this very important and interesting topic is that you are not your thoughts and emotions. They're just something that comes through you, that happens, you might say, right? Like clouds passing in the sky, as they say, a very famous Buddhist sort of way of talking about it, right? You are not your thoughts and emotions. Now, you may have heard that before, but I really want to encourage you to question that. If I'm not my thoughts and emotions, then who and what, or what, am I? This is a powerful question, and it's a little more than I want to get into in this video, but I have to start there because if we don't realize that there's something outside of or more than our thoughts and emotions, then the conversation is actually quite a quick one because the reality will become, and this is how most of us live, that our thoughts and emotions rule us, that we really believe that they are who we are. When we have a thought and we have a feeling, we identify with that thought and the feeling. We think it's who we are. But I want you to know, and hopefully by the end of this video, it'll become even more clear that you are not your thoughts and emotions. You're so much more. So that's the first thing I want to point out. The next thing I would say is that they have a pattern, a rhythm to them, right? Our thoughts and emotions. One of the best ways we could talk about this is actually to go into some sort of circumstance where you would have to deal with a thought or an emotion. And usually this is something negative, right, that we really notice. Like somebody hurts our feelings or makes us angry. They say something and it triggers a response in us, right? So what usually happens? Well, we have that response or we have that situation, somebody triggers us, and it begins, right? So it begins. The thinking and the emotions. Now, let's say it was anger, right? Now, anger usually actually is based in something else. We won't really notice what that something else is. We actually notice the anger first. Typically, it will be some sense of getting hurt or feeling defensive, right? So they'll say that thing. Maybe it's somebody you know very well, and they have a habit of saying that thing that kind of just gets your goat, right? That makes you feel insecure, and then it gets you angry. Now, see what's happening. The moment they say that thing, this is all starting. You're starting to think about it like, oh, I can't believe they said that again. You know, how many times do we have to go through the same situation before they realize that really makes me irritate? You see it? It's starting to ramp up. This is the wave. Now, what will happen is it'll build in intensity. You'll keep thinking about it. You'll start ruminating over it. The emotional charge to it will grow. And whether we actually let some of that out by venting our anger to them or on somebody else or something else, eventually what happens, though, is that that wave of experience reaches a pinnacle. It crests, just like a wave. And then it slowly, or quickly sometimes, depends, diminishes. This is how every single thought or emotion that you've ever have or ever will have occurs. It follows this pattern. There's a certain beginning, something that triggers it, it grows. It could be very small, right? It doesn't have to be some big thing. The small ones don't tend to catch us, or we don't notice them as much, right? So, but they all have that beginning. They reach some sort of crest, and then they end. And then they slowly or quickly dissipate. Now, I don't know if you can see the power that lies in what I just shared with you, but I hope to walk you through it. And I hope that it'll be very clear by the end of this video, because there is a tremendous amount of power in that simple information. The first thing that I'm going to share, in case it eluded you, is the fact that they all have an ending. Sometimes we have feelings, especially repetitive ones, right? Ones we have had over and over again. They feel like they're never going to end. When we're caught up, when we identify with those feelings or those thoughts, they really feel like they're us. But they're not us. And this is one of the ways that we can tell. Why? Because they have an ending, even though we don't, right? We are still here, and we have had thousands, probably millions of thoughts and emotions in our lives. And they all have followed this pattern of having a beginning, cresting, and then ending. So the next time you find yourself in a situation where maybe it is a slightly overwhelming feeling, you can help yourself, you can remind yourself that this too shall pass, as the saying goes, right? Every thought and emotion follows this pattern. So here's more useful information. Not only do we know that it will end, we know it has a beginning, and we know that it's going to grow in intensity. So this is like some sort of preparation in a way, right? Like we know that this is the pattern, and there's power and freedom in this knowledge. So once we understand this basic structure, right, there are kind of three parts to it: the beginning, the crest, and then the end. It becomes a matter of understanding how to ride that wave. Now, they're all different, as we've already hinted to, right? Some are really big, some of the really big kahunas, and some are small, just a small splattering of water. But they all will follow that pattern. So figuring out how to ride the wave, to become a master of riding the wave, is a very, very useful thing to learn. So that's what I want to share with you today. We're going to talk about some of the details of how to ride that wave. Now, there's actually only two movements, really. And you could say three, but there's two that we actually move, if you will, because there's always stillness. A very powerful thing to do, a very powerful part that lives within us that a lot of us actually don't give a great deal of attention to. The three pillars to spirituality that I'm always talking about: silence, stillness, and space. But that's not the two movements I was going to talk about. We can either lean in or lean away. Now, that kind of feels like surfing, right? You could be working with the wave. And what it ends up being is figuring out a way of balancing between those two things. Now, there's another way that we could talk about this motion of leaning in and leaning away. And I'm going to use the terms that I use in my course, my online course, and that is, when we lean in, we're allowing. When we lean away, we're letting go. And it becomes balancing between these two motions, right? So here's the circumstance. This person said that thing. It triggers us. We start to feel the ramp up. Now, what we want to do is, well, first of all, what I would say is we want to do our best not to feed into it, right? We don't want to start telling ourselves stories about it, and really, because if you pay close attention, all that storytelling, all that ruminating is us holding on to and feeding and identifying with those thoughts and emotions. So we want to do our best to lean away, to let go of that, right? We just want to be present for this wave. Now, as we're letting go, or we are not feeding into the story, we also, though, don't want to shove it away. So this is where we need to learn to lean in, to allow the situation to be exactly as it is. And some of that could be our ruminating, right? I mean, we've got strong patterns of thinking about something over and over again and having the same experience with this person. And so there's a lot of history, there's a lot of energy that's built into that. So part of the allowing is even giving ourselves a little slack to indulge in that a bit, right? But so that's where we're doing that motion, right? There's not just one thing. We're leaning in, we're allowing, and we're also leaning away and letting go. As we notice we're doing one too much, we don't want to do it too much because we'll fall over, right? The big kahuna will take us in. We want to lean back, let go a little bit. Now, if we notice we're letting go too much, right? Meaning that we're actually like shutting ourselves down, we need to shift a little bit and start to allow. Now, this may, I don't know if this sounds complicated or not. It's actually quite simple because it's only two things, right? And it's a very, like anything, like surfing, like riding a bicycle. I can explain things to you about it, but you actually have to engage in it. You actually have to do it so that you can get the feel of it, right? I could talk to you about riding a bicycle all day, but until you get on there and start doing it, you won't really learn, right? You won't really understand. Now, some of this is very useful because you get to know, okay, lean in, lean away. There's all these things going on, but you actually have to practice it. So these two motions can give you a tremendous amount of freedom from your thoughts and emotions. Not that we're trying to disassociate from our thoughts and emotions. That would be leaning away too far, right? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they can just come and go like they all do. And they leave very little residue on us, right? We don't get too wet from the whole thing. We can walk out. We can actually start to enjoy the ride. Even the big kahunas, even some of the, I've had situations more recently that, it's like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm dealing with this again, or I can't believe that I had to deal with that. But as it was coming to an end, as I was hitting it, I could just laugh because I could see how different I actually participate in that, right? How different of an effect it actually has on me in my life. This is what I like to call freedom. This is freedom. When you have the choice, right? When you start to understand what it means to lean in and lean away, to ride the waves of your thoughts and emotions. There will never be anything more useful for you to spend your time on. I can tell you that right now. Because of the fact of what I said in the beginning, right? Thoughts and emotions play a massive role in our lives. They actually really rule a lot of us. So if you found this information helpful, which I hope you have, first of all, I want to encourage you to please subscribe if you haven't. Hit the like button. Those are very useful things for my YouTube channel. I appreciate that. And as always, I thank you for your time. It's precious.